What's going on, everyone? I'm Phantom, and this is a Predecessor hero guide. In today's guide, I will be showing you how to master Sevarog. I will outline every ability, show you common combos, and explain Sevarog's role in team fights. If you want to jump to any particular part of the video, check the description for timestamps. If you want to see more guides in the future, be sure to subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section what guides you'd like to see. Without further ado, I hope this helps. Sevarog the Reaper is an offlaner that specializes in tanking damage and stealing souls. A strong Sevarog will dominate the offlane and laugh at those who try to hurt him. Sevarog's kit makes him a great engage tank because he has a little bit of mobility mixed with some hard crowd control abilities that can all do a surprising amount of damage. If you play this hero correctly, your teammates will love you and your opponents will fear you. Sevarog's passive ability is called Reaper of Souls. Sevarog harvests the souls of any enemy target that he kills with an ability. Each soul stack grants 2 health and 0.5 additional magical damage on his Siphon ability, which is his Q. Every 30 souls, up to 120, grant Sevarog further bonus health and Siphon magical damage. This passive makes Sevarog incredibly tanky, even without any tank items, and is one of the most important parts of his kit. In the early game, be sure you focus on building up soul stacks as early as possible, so that you can snowball into the late game. Although the spikes of bonus health and magical damage that you gain every 30 stacks maxes out at 120, you can still gain soul stacks beyond that, and each of those stacks are still worth the standard 2 health and 0.5 magic damage to your Siphon. Every time Sevarog reaches one of these 30 stack milestones, his shoulder pads grow larger and spikier. This is helpful because you don't always have to strain your eyes to read the number at the bottom of the screen. Rather, you can just look at your shoulder pads to identify exactly how strong you're getting. Sevarog's basic attack is called Crush. These melee attacks do not build stacks on his passive, so be sure to get your enemies low with this attack and then finish them off with your abilities. Sevarog's right mouse button is Phantom Rush. Sevarog rushes forward, gliding through any enemy units in his path. This is Sevarog's only movement ability, so be sure to use it wisely, especially in the early game as it has quite a long cooldown. This works great to close the gap between Sevarog and his enemies, and it pairs well with his other abilities, which we will cover later in the combo section of this video. Directional inputs will change the outcome of Phantom Rush. If you don't use any WAS or D keys, you will simply go in a straight line and a set distance. If you hold W while using your Phantom Rush, you will go further. If you hold S, you will go about half the distance. If you hold A or D, you will move slightly to the left or right during your dash. Sevarog's Q is the previously mentioned Siphon ability. Strike forward with a spectral hand, dealing magical damage to all enemies in a cone in front of Sevarog. Siphon heals Sevarog for 10% of the damage dealt to minions and monsters, and for 25% against enemy heroes. Sevarog's passive and this Siphon ability are the bread and butter of his kit. Siphon will be your main damaging ability, which scales very well with your passive, and it has an incredibly short cooldown, so you can use this often and not worry too much about not having it on cooldown for last hits. It doesn't have an incredible range, so be sure to close the gap between yourself and your enemies before you try to hit someone with it. Its area of effect makes it great at clearing minion waves and last hitting multiple enemy minions at once to stack your passive as fast as possible. What you're going to want to do with this ability is use your basic attacks to get all your enemy minions in front of you down to 1 hit, and then use your Siphon ability to finish them all off at once. This can be a little bit hard to balance with your allied minions attacking your enemy minions, but as long as you time it right, you should be able to get at least 3, no problem. Sevarog's E is called Subjugate. Call down dark energy, dealing magical damage to all enemies in the area and rooting them for 1.25 seconds. When the root expires, the targets will be slowed by 20% for 0.75 seconds. This ability deals a surprising amount of damage and scales off of magical power. You will often use this ability to engage into unexpected enemies or to stop them dead in their tracks as they try to flee your melee range. This will be your primary engage tool, but be cautious of its long cooldown. In case it's unclear, Subjugate also contributes to Sevarog's passive. Any blast hits you get with this ability will grant you stacks towards your passive, so be sure to use this if your Siphon is on cooldown. Sevarog's R is Colossal Blow. Deliver a heavy blow from Sevarog's hammer, dealing magical damage to all enemies in a cone in front of him. Enemy heroes struck by the blow are knocked back and sent into the air a significant distance. This ability is best used for its crowd control effect, so be sure to use this to knock your enemies back into your team or allied tower to force them into taking significant damage. In the laning phase, you can use this on your enemy laner to put them towards the entrance of the jungle if your jungler is looking for a flank. This will make it incredibly easy for them to engage and get a lot of easy damage for free. There's also combos well with some of your other abilities, and I'll cover that later in this video. Colossal Blow has nearly limitless potential, so get creative and utilize your surroundings as often as possible. Sevarog's abilities can be used effectively in almost any order, but he does have some great combos to discuss. A great early game combo is probably his most simple one. Start by rooting your enemy with Subjugate, then use Phantom Rush to close the distance on your foe, and follow that up with Siphon and as many auto attacks as you can safely land. Don't be too greedy with your engagements, and remember in the early game, you don't have to kill your opponent on every engagement, so long as you are dealing more damage to them than they are to you. This is also a great combo to use through fog walls if you can see your enemy opponent on the other side. When your opponent isn't expecting you in this way, it is very easy to line up your Subjugate and get this combo rolling. If your enemy laner is pushing very aggressively into your tower, you get a really good combo unlocked as soon as you hit level 6. When they're close to the edge of your tower and trying to play it safe and not go under, what you can do is use your Subjugate to root them in place, then use Phantom Rush to close the distance and get behind them, and then turn around and smack them with your Colossal Blow to send them into the range of your tower. This will not only get significant tower damage on them, but they'll also be incredibly out of position, and it'll be really easy for you to follow up and get the kill. Sevarog is a very strong scaling tank, so I would recommend playing as safe as possible early game and just try and get your last hits for your passive. The faster you can build up that passive, the faster you'll snowball into the late game, and you'll absolutely dominate your foes. Your main role in team fights is twofold. First, you're going to want to make sure that you're protecting your allied damage dealers at all costs. And on top of that, if you can get an engage onto the enemy mid laner or their mage, you can deal a significant amount of damage, and they can't deal that much to you with your massive armor and health pool. Tanks, in general, work really well as anti-mages, so be sure to target those mages and avoid ADCs, as they'll probably be building some armor penetration and be able to shred you pretty quickly. On Sevarog, you're going to want to focus on building health, armor, and a little bit of magical damage. Though there are a lot of characters in the game that deal magical damage, a lot of them occupy the same roles, so you won't see a lot of them in the same game, and a lot of the most threatening characters deal physical damage. So on average, you're probably going to build more physical armor than magical armor, but if they do happen to have, say, a Gideon, Richter, Sevarog, that kind of thing, then you probably want to build some more magical armor instead. As an offlaner, you are going to have a little bit of difficulty roaming in the early game, pretty much until your team gets the second Fangtooth and you get that out-of-combat movement speed boost. But until then, I would focus mostly on pushing your tower, and if you want to occasionally gank mid or help out in the river if there's going to be a small team fight there, feel free to go swing over and use your CC to really help your team out. They'll love you for it. That CC is absolutely incredible. The root helps so much, and the slow that follows it is so easy for mid laners to land their abilities. So they're a really good lane for you to gank. I hope this guide has been helpful. If you want to see guides for any other characters, let me know down in the comment section. I want to make a lot more Predecessor content, so if there's any other type of video you'd like to see, also leave it down there in the comment section. I plan to make overall role guides for all different positions in the game, so stay tuned and subscribe if you want to see my future videos. I usually don't ask, but it goes a long way to tell YouTube that my content is worth watching, so again, please do subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a lovely rest of your day, evening, morning, afternoon, and night. Bye-bye.